Welcome to the Town of Barnstable Comprehensive Financial Advisory Committee. Today is February 12th, 2024. This meeting is being recorded by the Town of Barnstable and will be available after this meeting has concluded. The agenda for this meeting is available on the town website. Chuck, will you call the roll, please?
Did it again. Sorry. Chris?
Here.
Jackie?
Here.
Hector?
Yep, I'm here.
Lillian?
Here.
Jim?
Here.
Neil?
Here.
And Chuck is here, so we're all here.
Thank you very much. The first item of business is the approval of the minutes of the January 22nd meeting. Is there a motion to approve it?
I move.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the January 22nd meeting. Are there any changes or corrections?
So I just,
I think you're on page 5 or something.
yeah, yes, page 5, and then on to page 6, under the header, top 10 DPW engineer prioritized CIP projects. Number 2, second line, this is envisioned to be a recurring appropriation. Item 4, second line, end of the sentence, I would change the sentence to read, that connect to other roads. And then item 6, number 6 on that page, the word complete should have a D at the end, completed first. And then page 7, item 9, second line, the word on should be deleted. And that's all I have.
Okay. I've got one on page 2. It's under the Dan Santos line 10. It should be Long Pond. You're just missing a D. Are there any other changes? Okay. Chuck, will you call the roll, please?
Will. Chris?
Yes.
Yes.
Jackie?
Yes.
Hector?
Yes.
Lillian?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Neil?
Yes.
And Chuck is yes, so they're approved.
Thank you very much. This evening we have DPW, and they were going to talk about the Public Works Capital Program. So I think Dan is here somewhere, and you're on.
Hello, I'm here.
Thank you.
So we wanted to speak about the enterprise accounts, and so I have the division supervisors here for the 3 enterprise accounts.
Okay.
And, we'll start with Tracy Regazio, who's the supervisor of the solid waste division, to discuss his capital project proposals.
Thank you.
All right, apologize for being on my phone. My internet is horrible, so if I disappear, I apologize for that too. Solid waste, we are really just looking to replace a bunch of old equipment. There's nothing really special. We've got a container replacement program, excuse me. And we've done a couple of those in the past. That's actually the roll-off cans that the trash gets put into. That's kind of a constant ongoing battle between rust and deterioration. I have compactor unit replacement, which is actually the units themselves, the motors and the hydraulic tanks and all the hydraulic things that go into compacting the trash into those cans. We put some, they've been in place since 2000, 2001, something like that. We did put some repairs into them a few years ago, but they're getting to the end of their expected life, and it's time to get looking into those. I've got a John Deere tractor mower replacement That's a 1999 unit that we actually acquired as a hand-me-down from the highway department. It used to be used for roadside. We've got a Kubota F-Series sweeper, which is a small little unit that we use. It's written here as sweeper, but it's a sweeper, it's a snow blower, it's a backup mower for mowing the grass in the area. And that also was a hand-me-down from the highway department years ago. All this stuff is just, we've gotten all we can out of it, and it's time to move them along. And that's all I have for this year.
Great. Now, did you replace the containers last year?
We have kind of an ongoing. We did a couple last year.
Uh-huh.
We try to do a couple every year.
I
In
see.
the beginning, we had purchased like, I think 15 all at once.
Right.
So they all came to age at the same time. So we're trying to keep up, and so we don't have to spend a lot of money all at once. And we've got them broken apart pretty good now. So a couple every year works out well. We keep them going, keep everything safe.
Yeah. Thank you. Does any member have any questions?
I just wanted to ask if, have you, with your mowing, have you had a look at any of the robotic mowers that Husqvarna puts out? Have you taken a look at any technology
Yeah.
improvements in that area?
Yeah, we have. We've looked at it. I do have a slope mower that we bought a few years ago that works really, really well. Probably not. Some of the remote units are nice. They're very expensive.
Yeah,
And I really don't think right now we're keeping an eye on them, but we really don't have enough of a use for them to
gotcha.
warrant.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I was just curious. I know it's available. I didn't know if we use
Yeah,
it.
they're really neat pieces.
Okay.
It's technology that's definitely coming. All remote control. No, we'll be there at some point, but right now the cost of them is a little extravagant.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any
Lily,
other?
can I ask a question, Lillian? It's Betty.
Yes, go ahead. Hi, Betty.
Hi, Lillian. Hey, I got a question. I don't know if this is the right person to ask, but one thing that concerns me is our actual the disposal of our waste. That it doesn't go to the incinerator, that it goes to out-of-state landfills. I know you're talking about the capital improvements. Maybe that's a different subject matter. Is that coming up this year in terms of the ultimate disposal of the waste that we do that does leave the transfer station? Or is that a different subject?
Well, it's a different subject, but it's not coming up this year. It's I think we've got another 3 years before we have to look at that again. And not all of it goes to out-of-state landfills. Some of it does go to CMAS, the incinerator. We don't have control over that. Once the company, we've got a contract for disposal with this company, and they make the deals that they make. But a lot of it does go to CMAS, which is the incinerator.
Yeah. And here's another question. If we wanted to, because I've seen the statistic, that about 30% of our waste is the organic matter, right? If we did a real push like Nantucket, I know Nantucket has that whole huge composting system over there. And I'm familiar, having been on Nantucket, and see what they have to do with their waste. They have to sort it and everything. I mean, if we made a push to do something, in terms of from the town council to do something more aggressive in terms of encouraging composting, what would that do to you in terms of how to handle that? How would that impact? Would that be something that we'd be constrained on doing because we don't have the, the tools, the whatever we would need to do that? I know you do the composting, but I don't know if the scale is such that it could be done at a larger scale.
Well, yeah, the food waste right now is the big thing with DEP. We're with the group that's helping me with that's increasing all the time. I think we're getting like a half a ton a week, even though it's winter time, and that goes up a little bit in the summer, and that's growing.
Yeah,
To
and the
go
reason
to-
is, if I can interrupt, Tracy, the
Yeah,
reason
thank-
is, Counselor, is that the Infrastructure and Energy Committee was interested in this as well. And so they have worked with us to advertise food waste collection, and they have rack cards, and they've put out information to the community. They've increased the capacity that we can handle. They have buckets that they have distributed. So we are doing what you've suggested to increase the amount of at least removing the food waste from the waste stream.
Yeah, I just wondered if we, did some sort of regulatory aspect where people had to do it, similar to Nantucket. I just was curious what impact that might have on our operation, or if we're not even ready for that kind of magnitude.
Yeah, we're not really ready for that. That's why the DEP and the infrastructure committee there is doing it the way they're doing it. Baby steps. We've been told that there is a mandate coming, and what they do is they put these grants out and they get the advertising out there, get from infrastructure built. Because right now there's very few companies that will take it. It's not really something that we could do on site without quite a bit of infrastructure change.
All right.
So
And
we're
my
kind of
last-
going in that direction.
My last question was, isn't the stuff now going over to the joint base? Aren't they doing it over there, this Barnstable Land Trust or somebody is taking it, right? Aren't they doing it offsite, the composting?
I have no idea. Our stuff goes to Watts Family Farm.
That's what I was there. Okay, that was the name then. Okay. All right. Thank you.
So I just have a follow-up question. So Dan, if town council mandated food composting, a half a ton a week would go up to how much? Would take a guess.
I wouldn't guess. It wouldn't be prudent to guess.
Yeah,
That's true.
Yeah, I just don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
we could look at the amount. You could do it back of the envelope, look at the amount of volume that we take in through waste, make an
Right.
assumption. We
Right.
really don't know. These are some of these numbers about the percent are general numbers from studies. The way you really know, and they did this years ago, was you randomly open the trash that's coming into the facility and you see what's there, and you weigh it
Right.
out separately for the different
right,
parts, and you study it, and then you
Right.
get the best sense of what that amount is. Then obviously, if you mandate it, you have to enforce it, which increases expenses, obviously.
right.
We'd have to think through that.
Yeah, and Betty, we'd probably want to talk to Nantucket if to see how they transitioned to mandatory.
Oh yeah, no, Nantucket's program is like beyond comprehension. They have this super, I mean, you couldn't touch it. The money now. I mean, I don't know if Dan's been over there. This giant cylinder that does the initial stage of composting to get it on its way, and then they compost. And the final thing, does the hospital or the schools, do they compost their food waste? Is there anything coming from the hospital or schools?
I could speak to that. Through one of the civic clubs that I belong to, we helped the Cape Cod Challenger Club Green Project buy a food dehydrator. So it's operated by the capabilities. And so what they do is they pick up all the food waste from the high schools and they put it in a dehydrator, and within a couple of hours it's all converted, all of the moisture is taken out, and in a couple of hours it looks like dry coffee grounds. So what they done now is they have packaged it as a soil supplement, and it helps to finance capabilities, and it's available in all of the garden stores up and down the Cape.
Well, that's great.
And it
Lillian.
works. Yeah, and
That
so
Thing, maybe we could look at as a town to
Well,
purchase.
yeah,
I don't
I mean, we're a residential transfer station, so we wouldn't accept waste from the school or the hospital, schools or the hospital.
Oh, where does it come in?
the dehydrator machinery is fairly expensive.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I just was curious because, we spend a lot of money on this, and anything we could do to, one, help the environment, and two, save some money would be a bonus. Okay, that's it.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions of Terry? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so why don't we go over to the Water Supply Division and Hans Kaiser.
Good evening, board members. Hans Kaiser. I'm the supervisor of the Water Supply Division. We deal with the Hyannis water system. And this year we have a total of 4 projects for a total of $39.8 million. The first 2 projects are recurring projects. The $1.5 million for pipe replacement. The $200,000 for the water supply well, pump station, and treatment plant repair. And the big ticket item this year is the construction of the straightway filtration plant for $35.5 million. And then the last one is design monies, $2.6 million for the Mary Dunn filtration plant.
I'm sorry, Hans, can you give a little more detail on the $35.5 million item?
Sure. That's been quite a process. We basically went from a new sources evaluation report effort and study, and figured out what was the best way to move forward with a long-term redundancy type of deficit in the water system, which means that it doesn't mean that we don't have water right now. We have water right now for everybody. The issue is really we need to have redundancy according DEP water supply regulations. And that is really the issue that we are addressing, combined with future growth. So new sources, the idea is there to create more water supply for the Hyannis water system with 2 parallel efforts. One is to look for new sources, and the other effort is to upgrade and refresh and redo the treatment systems on existing wells. We started with looking at each well field, and one of them is the Straightway and Hyannisport well field, to look at, okay, what are the options? Basically do an alternatives evaluation. That report is also out on the website, just like the previous report I mentioned. After that effort, where we looked at what should be treated with what technology, and what budgetary costs there would be, what the redundancy effort should be or could be. Then there were the follow-up of that was pilot testing to actually physically figure out if the recommendations that came from the consultant actually physically would work, and fine tune a preliminary design. That came out with originally a 2 treatment plant option down in the Straightway Hyannisport area. That got reconsidered, especially by the DPW engineering. They looked at the numbers and we redid some of the calculations. And last year we finalized a memo that basically looked at and came to the conclusion that one larger plant would be faster, better, and basically cheaper in the long run down there. And we are right now in the process of the design of the plant. And this CIP, this ask would be for the construction of the plant.
Okay,
The
thank you.
10.5?
I'm sorry?
Was that the 10.5?
No,
Million?
that is the $35.5 million.
Oh, the 35.5, okay,
So that's the construction monies.
I see. I wonder, I plead my ignorance. I wonder if you could sort of summarize what the filtration plant does.
Okay, it basically cleans up the water. That's the bottom line. We pump the water out of the ground. 100% of our water in Hyannis comes from the ground. And what we do is we get it ready for consumption, and we have to make sure it's safe. And it has to comply with all regulations on the federal and state level. What that means it depends on where you are. We'll tell you what you need to do to treat the water. In Hyannis, or right here where we are at, we have different issues to deal with. Iron and manganese is one. PFAS is another. We need to deal with a minimum amount of chlorination to make sure the water is safe and we don't get bacteria. And the last one is also one for dioxin, which is, a background
Right.
type of chemical, but it really needs to be dealt with. So that is what we do. So we basically build in a large industrial type of building, and we have these different treatment systems all connected with pipes, and we basically deal with each chemical to take it out or treat it individually.
Wow. So as the water comes through this filtration plant, you have various components that take
Yeah.
out different kinds of.
Yeah.
I see.
Exactly. And then and then the key is to figure out, and this is why we have help from consultants, because we know a lot, but we don't know everything. So they help us figure out, okay, what should we treat first, what's second, what's third, and what's last, and then how to do it. And then we got to also make sure it's cost effective. We can actually manage the treatment plant. So it's actually, we can operate it and maintain it, and, adjust it. That's basically how it works. Everybody is welcome to come and visit the Maha filtration plant that we built just 2-3 years ago. Just to have a look at, if it would help you to get an idea about what we do and how complex these systems are.
I'd love to get on that list.
Thank you, do that. Yes, I
Oh,
think we'd like
I'd
to do
love to get
that.
on that.
I think
Yeah,
I'd love to do that.
Yeah, the water board is planning to do a couple of sessions this spring to give tours and explain what we do, what it looks like, so you have a good idea where the money of the ratepayers goes.
Oh, no, that always happens.
And,
That's like what happened.
Hey, can I add something? It's Betty again. Hans gave me an amazing tour, and Sam Wilson, head of the water board of the Mahar Wells. It's one of the most impressive things I've ever seen. And one thing that Hans didn't say, maybe you thought you might know it, but the straightway wells, they don't have conditioned conditions, I guess is a way to put it, which means in the winter they have to be taken offline.
Ah,
So I think part of this, and that maybe he didn't say it, but and Hans, correct me if I'm wrong, but this project will allow you to keep the straightway wells or the straightway in the Hyannisport pumping all year, correct? And right now he has to take those wells offline, which, you know, works because our water's lower because we don't have a summer population. But is that accurate, Hans? And that may help to explain the kind of extreme cost because we have to winterize that to keep that water all year.
Betty, you're 100% right. And silly me, I forgot to mention that. But yeah, that's huge because right now,
Standard, yeah.
right now we only can use those wells in the summertime. We winterize because right now the filtration systems that we had to install a couple of years ago, very quickly, we have them outside, and for the wintertime you got to drain them, otherwise they freeze and they break. There's quite some urgency on get all those filtration systems inside. That's correct.
if you could give us the dates that it would be convenient for us to come and visit, I think a number of members of the CFAC would be very interested in seeing how this works.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a board meeting next Tuesday night. That is when the board's going to make a decision which date's going to work. And it's probably going to be a Saturday and maybe an evening, but I don't know yet. But as soon as we have that, Sam Wilson would be the person to talk to.
Maybe you could have Sam Wilson reach out to Lillian Wu when those dates are confirmed, and then Lillian, you could communicate that to the rest of us.
Yeah, and then we'll see, yes. Because this is
Yeah,
fascinating.
I'll make sure it happens. And yes, and to be honest with you, this new facility is basically the first one in the state of Massachusetts that
Wow.
deals. Yeah, it's a pretty cool facility. I'm pretty proud of it. Yeah, you're welcome to come and visit and check it out.
Thank you.
You're
Does
welcome.
anybody else have any questions of Tom?
Yes, this is Neil. Thank you for being here, Hans. Can you explain what changed to cause last year's estimate of the cost being 25 million and this year being $10 million higher? I couldn't quite figure that out from the Kleinfelder study.
Yeah, it's actually fairly easy. The original ask was 10 million, a little bit over 10 million less, because that was basically only one plant. Because remember, originally we were trying to do two plants there, one for Straightway and one for Simmons Pond and Highport. And we reconsidered that thought process and came up with the one plant solution. That is why it's $10 million more, but long-term, it's less money.
The prior CIP, if I'm correct, did not have a second plant. Is that correct?
No, because it was planned out further
one.
further away than the CIP schedule.
It was
Okay,
just for
so
one of the plants.
Right. So there were two plants, but one, and per the what Garth sent out, which was, and I appreciate getting the information in email. So that was in 2029, which was beyond last year's CIP timeframe. So you're essentially to be more cost effective overall, bringing in that cost by adding 10 million now as versus $25 million again in 2029.
Yes.
Thank you. Got it.
Any other questions or comments? Neil, did you have a question about the Mary Dunn filtration plant?
Yes, they also answered that in the email.
Oh, okay.
I haven't had a chance to, so that's leveraging infrastructure at the well field. So I think the answer is there. I probably don't need to have them spend time on that now. I appreciate the getting all that information. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Hans. You're free to go.
Thank you,
And
Hans.
next up for water pollution control is Andy Boulay.
Good evening, Andrew Boulay,
Bye.
Water Pollution Control Division Supervisor. I also have 4 projects that we're putting forward this year for a total of just under $1.9 million. The first project is the pump station rehabilitation program. This is a continuation of a program that started in 2019 for the rehabilitation of all of our sewage pump stations. There's 28 pump stations in town, all of varying ages, and this program really seeks to just identify problem areas and potential areas of failure and correct them. This program, the first 5 years of this program have really been more dedicated towards singular pump stations or groups of pump stations in larger projects. And this year looks to kind of tie up some loose ends of the first 5 years of recommendation at some of the smaller pump stations that might not have been as critical, but they are in need of some repairs. And it also seeks to design some improvements for years 6 through 10 of this program. The second CIP that we're putting forward is for our effluent sand bed valve rehabilitation. If you've seen a satellite map of Barnstable, you could probably pick our sand beds out. I think you can see them from outer space practically. There is a large network of distribution pipework around the sand beds, and there's clusters of valves that they used to be able to be operated automatically. The automated features have all failed. We operate them all manually, and they've all become more and more difficult to operate. The majority of them are 45 years old and are in need of replacement. So we're going to go through the network of valves in our sand beds and replace them all. The third CIP that we've put forth is a sewer system rehabilitation study. This is really a focused look at the capacity of the existing sewer system. This is something that we do roughly every 10 years or so to update a computer model for our system, looks at pipe capacities, looks at the flows that we're seeing, anticipating future flows and working them into the model, and just loading it with data and making recommendations for repairs or upgrade of certain sewer pipes. And then the final ask is for a new bypass pump. As we've gone through and rehabilitated many of the pump stations, we've added another layer of redundancy for backup, which is to include bypass connections. So typically our designs will have a standby generator to provide backup power. We'll also add a portable generator hookup so we can tow a generator in case our generator fails. And then in the event that maybe the electrical distribution panels all, if they get struck by lightning, we can tow a portable bypass pump up and start that up and pump flow around the pump station essentially. So our existing pump is a little bit old and we're looking to replace that with this ask. So happy to take any questions on any of these items. Also offering tours to anybody just like Hans who would like to come tour the treatment plant. Although I would suggest waiting a few years until we go through our next round of upgrades, because there's some really cool filtration technology that we're going to be adding in the next 5 years as well.
I'm amused that you have a backup to the backup.
It helps me sleep at night.
Yeah. Now, how do you maintain the 28 pump stations? Are they all done every year? Some are going to need more maintenance than others.
Sure.
So how does that work?
Yeah, it really depends on the how critical the pump station is. At least with the report, we looked at the consequence and likelihood of failure and addressed the highest priority items first. Also, there are different types of pump stations. There's Old Colony Pump Station, which is across the street from Town Hall, which pumps 800,000 gallons a day of sewage to the treatment plant in the summertime months. And then there's smaller pump stations that maybe serve just the neighborhood. And those pump stations may only pump 8,000 gallons a day or even less. State law calls for any pump station over 100,000 gallons a day to be checked daily. So those pump stations by nature get a little bit more attention than some of the smaller ones. All of the pump stations are monitored daily, and the smaller ones are visited weekly. So there is a little bit of variation in how we tend to them.
Right.
But the program itself really looked at the consequence and likelihood of failure and prioritized the repairs based on those parameters.
Thank you.
What type of skill sets do your employees have that service the pumps? Are these mechanics?
Yeah, a lot of mechanical experience, and a bit of electrical experience. It's definitely part of the training when they walk in the door. We send them to a lot of safety programs for electrical safety specifically. Knowing what they can't touch is very important. We work around not high voltage electricity, they call it medium voltage, but higher voltages than household electricity. So it's very important that they're trained from a safety perspective first, knowing what they can and can't do. We do have a staff mechanic who is on our staff who's very mechanically inclined. And also we have a service contract with a contractor, a mechanical services contractor that we took out about 3 years ago, and that's worked out really well for some things that are maybe a little bit more complex, or if multiple things pop up at one time, we can tap them and use their skills as well.
Okay. So they are certified, there are certifications involved?
Yeah, there are wastewater licenses for our staff, and there's certain requirements. And the higher you move up the wastewater certification scale, the more we pay our employees.
Oh, great. That's great. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions or comments?
All of the bypass equipment, is that tested on a regular basis? Is there like a schedule set to check those things?
Yeah, well, it's a matter of just the valve exercise at the pump stations, which is something that we do on a regular basis. And then we have a service contract. So the same people that service our generators also service the bypass pump. So that gets serviced twice a year, which is one of the reasons why our original pump, and I don't know the vintage off the top of my head, but it's been around for almost 30 years because it's been really well maintained. And we plan on keeping it too. Another backup to the backup, if you will.
Might as well have 3 backups, right?
So Andrew, you mentioned that there are 28 pump stations that you're responsible for. And how many are over 100,000 gallons a day or whatever that threshold amount is?
There's about 7 of them.
Yeah. And those are checked every day, the larger ones?
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah. And you mentioned the waste treatment facility. Is that, so this is, here we're talking about the Hyannis sewer system. Where's the waste treatment facility? Is that the one over off of Route 28?
That's
that where it
on
goes?
Burses Way, across from U-Haul.
It's one in the same hectare.
Yeah,
Oh, right.
yeah, that's what I thought. So as the town is building out its sewer system elsewhere, or they must be looking to you and your team for advice from time to time, I would think.
Oh yeah, we're involved with all of the design meetings, giving our preferences, trying to do the best job we can in standardizing. That's a big priority for us, and trying to keep things as simple as possible, but also uniform, so that we don't have 5 different types of pumps at 5 different pump stations. It's a big consideration, but a fair amount of my time is dedicated towards sitting in on sewer expansion meetings and giving input for sure.
Right, right.
Just to give you an
And-
idea, he mentioned that there's 28 pump stations. When we're done with our CWMP, we're gonna have 3 to 4 times that amount, that number.
Right,
Right.
right, right. So Andrew is in line for a big promotion, I'm guessing. And Andrew, what was I gonna ask? I'll think of it, but sorry, senior moment. But
Can I
very,
ask-
very interesting.
Actually, if I might ask, we have 28 today. And we're gonna have 3 to 4 times more at the end of CWMP. Any idea how many more pump stations will be by the end of phase 1?
That's exactly the question I was going to ask.
That's a good question. And we're in the middle of implementing phase 1. I can think of.
We
Sorry.
we know the answer. I don't have it with us tonight, but we can get that to you. We definitely have.
Okay, it's not critical, it's just interesting. I certainly were all aware of the giant new pump station at Finney's and Route 28. They're not all that big, I know.
Well,
Yep.
yeah, to that point, 28 pump stations is what we have right now, and 29 and 30 are coming, within the next few months, with those being that and Strawberry
Right.
Hill being 2 of them.
Yeah,
And then I think you're in the magnitude of 10 to 15 more, by the end of phase 1.
quite a project, amazing.
What's the capacity of the new one at Finney's and Route 28?
Well, it's designed to handle all of the flows for the remainder of the comprehensive wastewater management plan. So it's designed to handle about 3 to 4 million gallons a day.
Huge.
Wow.
It's huge.
God.
Okay.
And typically
Yeah,
they'll design them with a peaking factor, so it can pump far more than that.
Right. And I remember what I wanted to ask before, so this shows my ignorance, but when was the Hyannis sewer system constructed?
So it started in the Main Street and South Street area in 1935 was
Wow.
the original installation. The original pump station, it's since been gutted and it's not in use anymore, but it's still there at the head of Pleasant Street, and I believe it's Pleasant Street and South Street.
So the
You wouldn't notice
1930s
it
is,
driving by.
yeah. So the 1930s is when the Hyannis system was constructed, and how many residential, or how many however you quantify your customers, how many customers are there that you're serving?
We have 4,500 accounts.
Okay.
I am not sure how many residents that equates to off the top of
Okay.
my head.
But 4,500 people have connected, entities, houses, businesses have connected to the system.
That's correct. And it's about 40% commercial, 40% residential and 60% commercial at this point in time. But as we expand, that number is going to skew more towards residential.
Yeah. And just for comparison, Dan, if I'm not correct, 12,000 homes are being connected under the new CWMP.
That's right.
But that's for the entire phase 1, right?
No,
Right.
all
Yeah.
3 phases.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first 30 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very interesting. Thanks, Andrew.
Can I ask a question? I was just curious, Andrew, you talked about the big project coming on to renovate the whole plant there. Is this plant gonna be able to handle all 3 phases once that's done?
Yep, the treatment plant will certainly be able to do that, and all the designs that we're completing with the treatment plant itself it's keeping all the flows of the CWMP are factored into the design that we're undergoing right now.
Yeah, and one question, I remember Mr. Steen had come to the local comprehensive planning committee and made a presentation. And he had talked about, after this is all said and done, that there could be some water mounding going on in Hyannis, that you might have to put wells throughout Hyannis to deal with that. Is there any design or future thought with that? Is that still a concern, the water mounding?
What's water mounding?
Yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
wanted to know.
Water mounding is when you add water to the ground surface and it goes down into the groundwater and it elevates the groundwater table. So it's like adding rain
Right.
to our water table. So when you have a wastewater treatment plant where you're discharging effluent every day, you end up with an artificial groundwater mound. And it's not in the future. We have one now. We've had one since the plant was built. The groundwater is elevated over the initial condition in the vicinity of the plant. And so one of the things we look at when we study these is making sure that the mounding will not be affecting either surface waters levels or in the case of very high groundwater, perhaps even intersecting basements and creating issues with basements in homes. So that's an analysis that we do. And one of the alternatives we're looking at for the plants for our effluent disposal is how can we dispose of more at the plant, not have to find alternative locations, and then manage the mound so that we don't get these impacts to residents. And one way to do that is by removing the water, pumping it out of the ground, and then utilizing it as a resource, for example, irrigation. So there's a lot of that underway right now, different alternatives for addressing the effluent disposal.
Could those, Dan, could those be revenue sources or would those be expenses? How do you see the solution?
They could be revenue sources. We have a study underway as part of this is there's two types of reuse. In one of them, it's non-potable reuse and then potable reuse, where it actually is utilized for a drinking water supply, which they're doing in many parts of the country that are more water restricted. Water is a very important resource, particularly out west in California, and they have to reutilize the resource.
Thank you.
So would we be transporting the treated water to other locations to achieve what you're talking about?
Possibly. We haven't finished that
I see.
work yet, but we're looking at all the alternatives from
Well, that's fascinating.
reuse, putting it in, removing it, using it for irrigation, alternate locations for disposal that, that's costly. That's controversial. Ideally, we'd want to do it here where we have permits to do it already and do it that way. The DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, is very stringent, or the regulations are, about how much you can modify the water table, in particularly in reference to surface waters. So you don't want to raise the water of a pond by a foot or something like that, and that would be restricted. We wouldn't be able to do that. So it's hard in a community like Barnstable, where there's 180 surface water bodies, to not be impacted by effluent disposal really anywhere.
Right. Wow. That's fascinating.
And challenging.
Yeah, I'm glad it's your job done. That's a tough one. Wow.
Actually, I've known Dan since he's actually 25 years old, but in charge of DPW has done this to him.
And then can I ask one more thing? I may be entirely ignorant here, because I know that our water system is privatized. Is our sewage treatment plant privatized, or are these town employees?
These are town employees.
Wastewater treatment plant is operated by town employees, and our Hyannis Water System is operated via a contract.
Right.
Other than Hans, he's a town employee.
Exactly.
yeah.
Now, is that something, Dan, that we're looking at? Like, because you talked about the enormous growth, 3 times what we have. Is there a study going underway about would it be more economical to do that similar to the way you've done the water system? Or are we going to keep doing this in-house? I'm just asking if
Yeah,
that's.
the way we're looking at it now is to continue in-house. We found in studies here and elsewhere that these privatization plans aren't always cracked up, to what they are meant to be. And they aren't always as cost savings. But the reason we did it with water was because we bought a water system entirely in 2005. So we had to immediately be up and running.
Right, right.
And the best way to do that was via a contract, because they could provide all the employees all fully trained right off the bat. And that's not the situation at the wastewater treatment plant. Ideally, I'd prefer to have the employees, myself, at the water division as well. So
Is the contractor for the water division Viola?
is that their name now? I think it is.
Yeah, Veolia, yeah.
Yeah, Veolia. Yeah.
Yep, thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
I
Thank
agree
you.
with whoever it was who said this is all fascinating.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
One of the great things about being on CFAC is we get to learn all these wonderful things. And not only the finances, but the ins and outs of the operations of the town. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Dan, is there anything else that we need to address here?
There were questions I think we had answered previously in our last meeting, but Griffin did respond today to those questions. And I guess once you have a chance to look at those, if you have any additional questions, just reach out to us. We're happy to have you come in and you can ask all the questions you want if there are individuals among you that are particularly interested in a certain aspect. So we're available to do whatever you'd like to do. But
Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. We know how busy you are, and we don't want to
that's okay.
overstay our welcome with you.
That's okay. The public is our client, so.
There is one question that we posed a while ago, and I guess the essence of it is the nitrogen removal and WPC facility upgrade in 2025 went up by $43 million. Is there an explanation for why that went up so much? Or should we expect that in the future?
Yeah, let me look at everything we've provided you. I think pieces and parts of that are there for sure, but let me take on your direct question and get right back to you on that.
Thank you, Dan.
Sure.
Anything else?
I'm good.
For me.
Well, thank you very much, Dan. We really appreciate
Dan.
your coming to 2 consecutive meetings.
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
unfortunate. to say the
thank you
least.
very, very much.
Okay,
Thank you.
take
Thank
care.
you.
Thanks, Dan. Bye-bye.
Do any of the members have any business that you'd like to bring up?
I think I thought that was very informative. I think it's, there's things that we take for granted, like drinking water that comes out of the tap and sewage that goes somewhere. But it's really interesting to me to learn a little bit more about it and to talk to the people who actually administer
Yes. I'm
this stuff.
I'm looking forward to the opportunity to visiting these water sites because I think it'll be very interesting for us, just to see
Yeah.
how it's done.
Yeah, I am too. And I wanted to ask Hans the question about what filtration technology they're using to filter out the PFAS. Because we heard in the last meeting, there's the carbon capture and then there's the reverse osmosis.
Right.
Does any of you know which technology they use?
They're
pretty
using,
sure
they're
they're
using the
using
granular right now because it's cheaper.
Yeah, they do the carbon and then they have to take it and get it all, cleaned out and sent back. I'm pretty sure that's what they're using.
Right,
Yeah, they're using the cheaper of the two right now.
right.
Yeah,
But-
and that's the problem is we have PFAS in every single well.
That's right.
It's everywhere.
And it
Well,
has
that's
life on
actually-
its own. You can't really filter all of it out.
Yeah, but that's actually an issue from a financial point of view that we really ought to be sensitive to. Graduated activated carbon, it's a proven technology and it works, and it's cheap, relatively speaking. Reverse osmosis is the Cadillac of technologies that isn't necessary. I think from a financial point of view, you really have to ask, I would ask, why do we have to go to that? Because it's going to add tens of millions of dollars to the cost up front, and it's much more expensive to operate ongoing. So from a purely financial point of view, I don't think it's a slam dunk based upon what I've seen from any of the submissions we've gotten.
But
We could-
presumably
Well,
they've done some kind of cost benefit analysis, right, Neil?
I haven't seen it.
I
Have
haven't
you?
seen it, but I haven't seen any indication. It's not a requirement of their proposals when they put together their projects. But
Yeah,
Right,
I
but-
think I think it's a placeholder. I think they I don't think they've actually, and I think it would work, but I'm not sure that we can afford it.
Yeah,
Now, the nice thing about reverse osmosis is it would anticipate that the DEP is going to slam additional requirements for even lower levels of contaminants than we have now. It would also solve a problem with the amount of contaminants going back into the effluent. But
That's true.
we haven't seen anything that justifies, spending a lot more. And certainly with it, from my perspective, from a purely financial point of view, that
Right.
extra money needs to be cost justified. And I think the town should ask for that.
yeah. But this isn't a this year event. This is, as you
Oh, no.
said, it's a placeholder.
Yes.
well, not really. I mean, it's on the map, right? As an appropriation, it's being requested. So I think that's 2027.
$63 million. And I think it's something I think CFAC should get ahead of, because we've asked now for that $43 million that popped up this year.
Yeah,
It is a this year thing. And we still haven't gotten anything more than it's 50% scope, 50% inflation. And
right.
I don't know about you guys, but I think that the town should understand that a little more deeply.
And should be able to explain that.
Yeah, I'm sure it's explainable. I mean, I think the straightway filtration plant was a very clear, it was 2 plants, but none of the second plant was ever shown. So they're accelerating that. I think that that's a question. Do we, it may be more cost effective overall, but is it the best way to spread the cost, given that we have real constraints on how much we can borrow?
Right.
Well, that's the charge to the CIP subcommittee to determine how deep you want to go into this.
Well,
and we will talk about that tomorrow.
And we will,
and it's not a simple issue.
Right, it's not.
no, but and it's not an issue that's going to go away.
Right, and that was my impression as being, the first time around, is that, there's lots of documentation on our past guidance to the council and the town manager. And there's been very little movement in that guidance. And as the years go on, we're one budget cycle away from the presentation that Mark gave a couple of days ago of reaching our debt ceiling limit. Not debt, I'm sorry. The ability to service the debt that would be required
Right.
to fund CWMP. And, part of our public discussions have been on, what should be the philosophy of our task force? Should we be recommending things like we have in the past, operational cuts, or or ways that the community can see the town is making an effort to try to manage costs and yet still roll out a comprehensive program in 30 years that could cost, $1.4 billion. Oh,
Well, based on the data that we're being given and the forecast, you all can extrapolate out to the future and figure out what the future, not only the debt service, but also the amount that we'll need to think about for debt exclusion,
Right.
because that's
So
coming.
I was struck at the last town council meeting. I think that's when Mark presented his CWMP financing update. I think, Jim, you were in the room too. And then
yes.
Neil, I think you were watching it on TV, and Lillian, maybe you were as well. But I was struck at the lack of questions that the town council, and they had this presentation sent to them several days in advance. So when Mark got to page 10 and he listed potential additional resources, and the bottom, the number 4 and 5 were, 4 was reduced services and redirect funding towards loan payments. And number 5 was a combination of some or all. That sparked very few questions from town council. And I think it's our job as a committee to, spotlight these issues and create a focus among our 13 counselors as to, the coming budget crunch, if you could call it that.
Yeah.
Well, I
Well,
mean,
I
Betty
think
wasn't,
there- I
you
think
weren't
there
there,
are-
Betty.
I'm sorry. I think
Betty-
there were actually very few questions from the counselors because so many of them were new and they needed to read it and digest it. And I
But they
think
had been,
by the next town council meeting, they will probably have a better feel for it. Yeah, but I think it's incumbent on CFAC to look at this and give it your best analysis.
yeah.
Yeah, and what,
Betty?
I would like from you guys, if I could interject,
Please.
is I would
Please.
love to have you guys present. One thing that really to me was embarrassing, it was inappropriate, was when Hector came and he gave a beautiful presentation as a public commenter. Okay, I would love to see you guys present as the CFAC. You present passively, in word,
Right.
in prose, if you want to say, but it's
Betty?
different when you're standing there and presenting. I think I would consider that very helpful.
Betty, we are not able to present unless we are invited.
Okay,
So as
well,
a town councilor, you can invite us.
I'm going to
Right.
get you guys.
Or you can make a request that we make recommendations. But we are very constrained by our responsibilities that are on paper.
Right,
So-
right.
Yeah, so
Well, in all due
anything,
respect, though, Mark Milne did ask on our behalf, the counselor's request from CFAC, a study
right.
of the tax exemption. And you
Yeah.
voted that down. Nobody took action on that. But
Right.
Mark did what he could have done at that particular moment and asked for that to be turned, this tax exemption be turned over to CFAC. And
Yes.
got turned
So
down.
the town, either the town council or town manager can request that CFAC make a recommendation and make a presentation to the council.
Right.
Yeah,
So
okay, well,
we,
if you guys are willing, I'd like to do that. I'd like to have you more engaged. And I will say, I think it's really important for you to delve into this mounding issue because it's huge, and it stems from the fact that they used to have a solution where they were perhaps going to take their effluent all the way out to Joint Base Cape Cod. And now that is off the table, or find an entirely other location to distribute the effluent. I mean, people have said that, the airport, not the airport in Hyannis, the other airport, the grass field, the beautiful grass field they own, and the golf course, the old fairgrounds, Old Barney, would be a great place to just let that effluent go. But
Right.
I really encourage you, because decisions made now are going to have enormous impacts. And when Mr. Steen presented to the local comprehensive planning committee, he said we may have to install 9 pumping stations throughout Hyannis to handle the mounds.
Yeah.
It's enormous, and it needs to be understood, and decisions made now will have very long-term impacts, financial and otherwise. It could be almost catastrophic. So that's why I brought it up. I didn't know if you guys are aware of it. It's an enormous issue.
yeah, so that's the first
Betty-
I've heard of the mounding issue, Betty, and we'll certainly look into it more. On a different note, at the CIP subcommittee meeting on January 30th, and Lillian, I don't think you were there. Craig Tamish, who's our liaison,
Right.
we spoke about the possibility of CFAC and or the CIP subcommittee presenting to town council, and Craig was all over that. He said absolutely. So you might just mention to Craig that Betty, that we had this conversation, and between the two of you, you could do whatever council needs to do to invite us to make a presentation at the appropriate time.
I will just interject, Hector. We will be happy to do that. But protocol actually means that we need to make a presentation to the town manager first. Because
So where is that written, Lillian?
it has always been unwritten, and we have always done it up until pandemic, and then everything fell apart. But we would write our report, and then we would go over it with the town manager, and then he would report it to the town council. So by sheer protocol, we really need to have a meeting with the town manager first before we make our presentation to town council. And so if Betty, if you would like to invite us later on, we would be happy to come.
Yeah, no, I don't want to disrupt your protocols, but I just think it's open. You guys are so smart. I mean, that's why I always
No,
show.
if you think that the council would benefit from our comments, and I'm sure you'll have questions,
Yeah.
it's a different point of view.
Yeah, and you're right. There's a lot of new counselors, Lillian, and they are not. They're probably hesitant because they're ignorant, and everyone who's ignorant doesn't want to look like an idiot. So they're probably going to hold back. So it would be a great time to have maybe more engagement than less. So
Yeah.
I think Hector's point, it's something I can discuss with President Penn, Vice President Tamish, and with Mark Els and Mark Milne, and see what might be possible.
Okay.
Have
That sounds good.
If I could go back to the
Jackie
mound,
had a comment.
could I ask a question about or make an observation about the mounding? The mounding is nowhere to be, no provisions, no money is in CIP for the mounding, pump stations or otherwise. So I don't know how we can comment on that.
Okay, and that is perhaps the next thing we probably can think about. We're thinking about the financial impact on the town, but have we ever thought about the financial costs, the health costs that will be associated with some of these things that are being done? You were talking about the reverse osmosis and the huge cost up front, but have we considered that it may just be a little more safe? It would be safer for the residents than actually treating with chemicals or the alternative? What are the health impacts? We know about the financial one, but are we going to kill everyone in the town while we save money?
Well, I have the advantage of an engineering degree, and actually my roommate was a civil engineer and took me through sewers. You shouldn't just look at the plant. You should look at how sewers operate. If you really want to understand how our infrastructure is structured. I think Jackie's brings a good point, but I think there are answers to that. That she would feel comfortable with. Reverse osmosis is, at least from the science we know today about contaminants, granulate activated carbon meets those requirements. If the requirements change, that could be another matter. But we're not, from what I can understand, we're not at risk right now.
The projects that they've discussed, they've presented them with the costs of having these projects up and running, but nobody has really explained the details to us of actually how they're going to accomplish it. So I can walk in and say, I need $10,000 to build a new porch. And I can tell you what the porch is going to be. It's going to enhance the property. It's going to do this, but I don't tell you what's going into the cost of the porch and all the other impacts that it's going to have. So sometimes I see what is being presented as a one-sided approach to what we actually need to know. It's not the complete package, just my opinion.
Well, we hope that those people who are looking into it and doing research will include that very important component. And, ultimately, when it comes up for financing, we can ask. But that's a good point.
I love the analogy because I was sharing with Hector and Neil earlier that that's kind of how I think about all this stuff, is in something that I can wrap my head around, which is what you do on your own home, and how you get loans and how you pay for things, et cetera, et cetera. And to Jackie's point, I'd amplify that a little bit by saying, so you want to put a porch on, and the good news is, and this speaks to what Neil was saying, is that there are building codes. I just can't go put on any porch, right? I have to call an inspector, I have to pull a permit. Inspector comes out and looks at it, make sure it's built to code. And once that all takes place and it's done, it's inspected and approved for use. And I'm hoping that's the same process, Neil, that they're using in all these analyses and consultants fees that they take up to build these plants and sewers, that all that's taken into account.
I believe that is correct. And most of the studies that they are, several at least I know of, that the DPW has the consultants are actually oriented towards meeting DEP regulations. So to the degree that DEP, which oftentimes increases the severity of regulations, as they have with Title V for CWMP recently again, that's the best that we know right now. Although some people will argue it's not good enough. But I want to go back to the mounding thing. If that's a big issue, I don't believe CFAC has I'm not sure how we would address that, given that it's not in CIP and there's no monies allocated to it that are explicit. Does anybody have a suggestion on how what question we need to ask to get to that?
Perhaps, Neil, that could become your recommendation. Adding the cost of the mounding to the cost of what is already there, So you have $200 million to put the project in, and then the mounding would cost another $100 million. And so your recommendation then could be, so where are we going to, how are we going to source this, and how does it affect the debt and all of that? So that could just perhaps be your recommendation, saying that this is a vital part of the project. And to ignore that part of the project is to incur that debt later where it was not budgeted for.
Yeah, I think, this is Betty, I think that's an outstanding idea. And as you saw when Dan answered, they haven't figured out the mounding yet, how they're going to deal with
Right.
it. And I think if you ask them, could you run you guys through the scenarios and see what the costs are associated with each one? Because again, if you're putting, like Mr. Steen said, 9 pumping stations throughout Hyannis, that's pretty expensive. But, and then Dan say, well, maybe we're looking at other things, but they have to talk to, it's very important, and you need to get a handle on the costs. And it's obvious they haven't figured it out, but they can give you rundowns of the various ways they might deal with it. It's very serious.
Sheriff,
So
is there a
maybe
way
we-
we could get a copy of that presentation that Betty is referring to?
Well, it was done by Mr. Steen, which is, he's the deputy, and it was at a local comprehensive planning committee meeting. I can't remember the exact date of it. There's probably a video of that meeting.
It was one of the recent couple ones.
Why
that
don't you ask Kelly
We-
Calpe? She's their communications director there.
Yeah.
She was there sitting with Mr. Steen when the presentation was given to the local comprehensive planning committee. So she'd probably be the best one to steer you towards that, and perhaps come up with a tailored presentation just for you. And have you presented with the various scenarios of how the mounding might be handled and the costs associated.
That's a good idea. We could also email Rob Steen directly, but Kelly is probably the person to go to.
Yeah, it
And
was.
you think it was
Sorry, it was part of a very long presentation here. He gave a it was a very long presentation.
And was it within the last 3 months or 6 months?
Maybe 6 to 9. I'm
Okay.
sorry. The local
Okay.
they haven't met that many times. So,
Yeah,
but Cal
okay.
could tell you right off the bat, and
Yeah,
I think you need a tailored presentation to see where they are now in their planning for how to resolve that.
okay,
And it all, I think, came to a head because they abandoned, and Mr. Steen said this, they abandoned the idea of hooking up to Joint Base Cape Cod. There was going to be some sharing going out through Sandwich and out to the plant there. And he basically said that had been abandoned, so.
okay. All right, we can certainly run that down, Neil and Jim, by looking through the recent agendas of the LCMP. They met last week, but they probably meet every other month or something like that, so that we can easily find that out.
Because this is not part of the CIP budget that you are looking at, one of the ways that you can get around it is to mention it as a possibility, as an area that needs to be explored.
Will it be
Right.
a part, will the mounding solution be a part of CWMP?
Yes, you can ask those questions. Those are totally legitimate to ask
Okay,
in your evaluation of the whole CWMP budget. That's right. It's just not the sewers and the construction, it's all of the things that go along with it. So it's totally logical to ask.
there's more than I can keep track of.
Well, Professor Neal,
Thank you for
you're
bringing
in
it up,
charge of
Betty.
mounding.
Yeah, but Betty, thank you for spotlighting
Yeah.
this issue
No,
for
that's
us.
a great idea. Thank you. I just need to ask the CIP subcommittee if there's anybody else you need to see before you start working on your draft? And when will you have a draft for the full committee to look at and discuss? As we begin to think about the next meeting and the meeting after that.
We, I believe, have committed on a calendar that was distributed that we will distribute the first draft on the 13th of March after assuming we get the town manager's recommendations on the 4th.
I thought
We
you
will
were
then
gonna give-
have,
I thought
Neil,
you
can
were
I just
gonna give
interrupt
us
for a
like-
moment?
Oh, I see.
Lillian, I have
Yes.
a Betty Ludke in the waiting room still.
Oh,
I
she
think
fell
she
off.
just disappeared, so I'm going to admit her, but I don't want to
who is it?
This is
hold your
tough.
breath.
So she dropped off.
Is it the real Betty Ludke, huh?
Let's see.
Betty, we lost you. Are you back?
No, Betty's, here she is. She's coming back.
Okay.
So the
So
schedule,
anyways, relative to calendar, the 13th is when we will email out the first draft, which will be a rough first draft, I'm sure. We're supposed to review that at a special CFAC meeting on the 15th.
Correct. And
We
so
will
you
then,
when are you planning for us to approve it?
we have another meeting for review of the next, actually the third draft, with the way it was envisioned, which will be, I believe, on a scheduled CFAC meeting, I believe on the Monday, the 25th, correct?
Yes.
And then we will have a meeting on, I believe, April 8th that is also scheduled for final approval, which coincidentally is April 8th is the date we are committed to submit the report. So I'm not
Okay.
quite sure if we're gonna, that's a good question as to if we approve it on the 8th, can we approve it on the 8th and be confident we can submit it, or are we going to need another day or whatever to turn it around? We
I
will
believe
have
Mark, I
the
believe
time,
Mark said that it would be fine to distribute it the next morning.
which means not a lot of changes on the 8th, hopefully.
Yes, so the 25th would be the last time that we could change it. The 25th of March.
Yes, I think that would be, and the CFAC will have seen it on the 5th, reviewed it on the 15th, and we will have incorporated as much of the input as we thought necessary before the 25th. So we should be in pretty good shape.
Yeah.
But it's complicated. I mean, we're still having, and as you will see tomorrow, Lillian, we're still having, discussions about the executive summary, which should, in a way, consolidate what are the key things that come up that we believe are going to happen. But we really don't know until the 4th when we see what Gareth and Mark have deigned is going to be the recommendation.
I see.
We're making certain assumptions now based upon history, such as most of CWMP will be approved as proposed. Most of enterprise will be approved or recommended as it is proposed, and that the $39 million of proposed general fund projects will be cut back to 16 million, which is about all that the Mark said that is easily available for general fund projects. And Gareth, if you want to give us any insight into, does that sound right? That'd be fine.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think back through the correspondence that Mark has sent out over the last week. Did CFAC receive any updates from Mark as far as the proposed projects going forward?
I believe I actually got that. I can't remember if it was from you or from, you sent me a spreadsheet, which was updated.
correct.
Right?
And that was a spreadsheet of the original submissions.
Right.
But
And
I
Mark
think Mark
sent out,
probably had another one.
right, Mark sent out a PDF, which was color coded as preliminary as to what was going to go forward and not. What I remember, for instance, was color coded Armory was not going ahead again. Does that sound right?
That sounds right. So if you have that preliminary list, you're gonna find that that's 95% accurate.
Yeah.
Because I'm working off that to put the budget book, the CIP book together. So there are going to be relatively few changes at that point from that proposed list of projects.
Well, that's good to know. I mean, I personally didn't think that would be a great thing to jump off the cliff with, because I've seen in the past that things change until the last minute. But that'll give us a good handle on it.
Yeah, we prepared that last week and kind of gave the ultimatum to the town manager that he kind of needed to lock in his thinking pretty much by last Friday. Now things do change, but it's not going to change a lot from that.
Okay, that's great to know. Do you remember out of the 39 million then, about how much is likely to go forward in the general fund, which was really enterprise I didn't see anything from enterprise being really eliminated, or from
Yeah,
CWMP.
Give me a moment, I'll pull it up and I
Okay.
can update you.
But did I answer your question, Lillian, in terms of the review process? And will that give CFAC, the larger CFAC, this CFAC, the time it needs?
Yeah.
If I heard you, we'll have 2 days, right? If we get it on the 13th and we're meeting on the 15th.
Yes.
Yeah.
And actually, I'd like to ask you, Chuck, because you've been through this and I believe have the record for a number of drafts.
Not a great word to have.
We're defying the idea of having 12 drafts by only having 3, and only 2 of those being reviewed. I'm also trying to deal, having been a scribe, which I'm trying to avoid, and I have 2, we have 3 members of CIP to help do that now. But is it better to submit things in writing, or as comments on a Word document, or verbally in a online meeting, do you think?
Well, since you phrased it that way, I like to get written comments to a common document so that I can cut and paste up from the same basis. The big challenge I had is person A gives me comments on draft 6 and person B gives me comments on draft 7, and I can't track the changes. So as long as the baseline is okay, I like written comments, because for me, it tells me what the writer really felt. It doesn't require me to interpret verbally.
Yeah.
But it also gives me a chance to edit if I think great point, but I think we can be more succinct or clearer or this, that, or the other thing. And then I incur the wrath, but we know where the changes came in. So that's my answer.
Lillian, you sound like you have a point of view too.
No, I don't.
Oh.
So you see, Chuck is our chair for the next subcommittee.
For the other one, yes. For the other one, yeah.
He's in charge.
Well, this may be too much in the weeds, and I apologize. We're using a shared Word document on the web that all of us can edit, the 3 of us. So there is no merging anymore of different emails. One of the things that we could do, but I'm not sure it's very new, is we could make available a version of that on the web to which we would allow everyone to comment. And then go through all those comments on the 15th.
Can't be done unless it's a called meeting. We are not able to do that.
No, it's just making comments. It's not a matter of discussing it. And
That's true.
Pardon?
Yes, I agree.
So
Yeah,
it's
as long as there's no deliberation on those comments and you wait for a meeting to do that, I think you'd be
Right.
fine.
Yeah, that'd be on the 15th.
Yes, we could do it that way.
It would, to me, if we did that, I mean, it requires everyone to do something they haven't done before. I think with Chuck, he's definitely knows how to do comments in Word and has done that before. I don't know if everyone, I don't want to exclude anybody because they don't know how to or wouldn't be able to do it. Unless everyone else says, well, I'll try to help them learn how to do it. I would do that for them, but and then it might not be 100%. There may be somebody who doesn't do it and they'll just talk on the 15th.
Are you volunteering to be our scribe for the operating committee budget?
The operating? No, I'm talking CIP here.
No, I know, but you said you would help us on this other one.
Well, if we
I'm-
can perfect this for the CIP,
Yes,
and then Chuck and company want to emulate what we've done for
Yes,
the
I
operating
agree.
budget, I think that works well.
yeah, I think that if you send us, if you send us the Word document, and if we can submit our comments and wait till the 15th to discuss it. You
That's
can
fine.
submit
It has to
but not
be-
discuss.
I don't know what your thoughts are, Neil, but it has to be, the comments should be done online.
Right.
Yeah,
It's a-
comments
it's a
on done
shared-
online, right,
Okay, right.
right.
Okay,
just-
so
And
actually,
Neil,
well,
and
sorry.
Neil, by comments, are you suggesting that people will just comment or they will make edits in the online document?
Well, they can make suggestions. They can
Neil,
make
what's your
comments.
answer? Can they make edits?
I would suggest, from what I know of Word on the web, which is new to me too,
Mhm.
if we give people the opportunity to post comments, which are basically on the right-hand side of the document,
Right,
they will be able to make edits to the document as well, to the body.
right.
We could ask them not to do that and just to describe what they want to do. And then we could use the comments on the right-hand side of the Word document as we went through on the 15th from the beginning of the document all the way to the end. We would know who made the comment, but I wouldn't recommend having people rewrite paragraphs or things or even sentences
Yeah.
online because we'll lose track of what happened.
Okay,
I mean, I'll save the original anyways. I'll make it separate.
right.
But I think if we can perfect the technique, it will save the angst that Chuck went through trying to, well, which revision of this thing are they commenting on and trying to change? Which I am very sensitive to. I don't want to go through what Chuck did if we can avoid it.
Oh, I'm sure that it will be well written, but I also let you know that we have a master wordsmith on our committee. And so there may be some editing recommendations.
And we can talk about those during the meeting as
Right.
deliberations.
Right.
Yeah. One of the things I intend to do, which I've actually started using, is there are some of these online AI-based spelling and grammar checkers, like Grammarly. I don't know if any of you have ever run into something like that. We can run the whole thing through that. I've been impressed by how clever it is. I don't any longer have to ask my wife to look at my writing, which is always very debilitating, I must say.
It's
Yeah.
complete.
Yes, so I think we can start using some of the technology. Um, but I got the idea. Well, we will
Okay.
have another chance to talk about this later.
Yeah,
But I know it. I think I have an idea now.
okay, good.
Well, thank you. All
And
right.
just circling back to your question about the CIP, we're looking at a just shy of $29 million general fund. CIP at this stage. That's 12 million in borrowing and about 6 million in general fund reserves. And then the remaining projects are out of Chapter 90 or Kirkman and things like that. So I
How
believe the
is
group has been sent that list.
so chapter? I mean, so chapter 90 is recommended, and you know where the funding is coming from.
Right.
So I mean, last year there were things that were general fund recommended. There were chapter 90 funds, and then there were things that were referred to CPA. And if they agreed, then they would come back to the town council.
That's correct.
Is the 29 million the combination of those three, or is it just GF and 90?
So you've been sent the FY25 proposed capital program PDF.
Yep.
And on the top of that, it does list each of those source categories. So you should be able to break it out specifically there.
Okay. And did you notice it if enterprise got cut at all?
That was filtered down from the original submissions, but that's also included on the list.
Okay, so you think those are good? I will pay more attention to those because you're saying that those probably are going to be close.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yep. Yeah, you could probably get started on anything you need to from that list.
So net of the $270 million that was proposed in total, you're suggesting that a $250 million is going to be recommended.
From all sources, all funds.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
That makes it 3 times bigger than anything ever in
It's enormous.
town history.
It's a big CIP this year.
Hmm.
And I'll be happy to share that on
Jim,
my screen
Hector.
if you want to look at it now.
Pardon?
I can share that on the screen now if you folks would like to look at it.
Yes, please. I'd love to see it.
I think we have our work cut out, guys.
Yes, you do. This is the biggest one I've seen.
Oh, yeah. It was going to be
So-
big, even if it was cut a lot.
Oh, my goodness.
So Gareth, has this been sent to us yet?
Yes.
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 What was the, so I have
We have these.
an email from Mark Milner on February 6th. Is that when this was sent?
Yes.
Proposed 25 capital program?
Yep.
Actually, what I have is a different color scheme.
Oh, it changes where you go. He's at the bottom.
I don't want the scoring, and I want the actual dollars. Oh,
Yes.
yeah, I've got
Okay.
that up on my computer now. The top line is enterprise funds. Yep, I've got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, boy.
Wow.
Well, this is great, Gareth. Thank you.
Yep.
Good
Oy.
luck. Good luck, guys.
Don't forget, you're a consultant to CIP.
Does
We have a
everyone
lot
see I
of
can turn it
questions
off?
for you.
You're not getting off scot-free, Lillian. All right.
Okay. Anything else that you want to talk about for the CIP report?
I think we'll to be continued tomorrow at 5 p.m.
Yeah. That's right. Anything else you'd like to bring up? All right, I will check with Mark about our agenda for the 26th, and let you know what it is, or Mark will you know what it is.
Right.
And, I do have, I'll go back to the beginning of the meeting. I logged off as quick as I could. But I'm quite concerned about this Zoom bombing that goes on. This is the second time
That's
it's
the first.
happening. So
Does it happen often?
I'm saying this is the second time I've experienced it, and
Wow.
so Gareth, I'm not sure how this gets resolved.
Yeah,
but,
we can.
that's-
There's a couple of other ways we can structure the meeting. We usually filter all participants through a waiting room. However, we have to admit them because it is a public meeting.
Right.
But there are some filters that we can use as far as a host, I can go into the waiting room and kind of vet the people first. Plus, we can, if we want to, we could also make it so that all participants are muted and videos are off, unless we recognize them and allow them to participate. However, that will slow down the flow of the meetings a little bit, and I'd be hesitant to do that straight away, but we can handle it.
Well, that's the first time it's happened to CFAC, as far as I
Yeah,
know.
no, this is the
Right.
second town meeting. I don't know. I thought it was a CFAC, but it must have been another town meeting. I logged into
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's
I-
concerning. It's
I kind of suspected it was
it's-
going to happen when I saw the people start to
Wow.
filter in there, but I was blocking them as fast as I could, and it was just easier to shut down the meeting at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we-
yeah.
Oh,
we
so
just
that's what you
logged
did as
out.
well? You shut the meeting down? Is that good?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
my suggestion would be, if it happens again, then we got to deal with it. But I wouldn't change any of your procedures now, Gareth, except perhaps, when people come into the waiting room, make sure you know who they are.
Yeah.
The problem is these are public meetings, and who am
Right.
I to decide
right.
who does
That's right.
enter? So
Right.
it's a
But-
catch-22 there.
But I would look at this as a one-off. If it happens again, then we'll have to worry about it. That's Jim, that's the way I would approach it.
We
Okay.
will leave it to the town to figure out.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move.
Is
I
there a
second.
second? Chuck,
Chris?
Chris
he
is
left
gone.
around
Oh, he did.
7:15.
He left. Sorry. Okay. Jackie?
Here, yes.
Hector?
Yes.
Lillian?
Yes,
Jim?
Yes.
Neil?
Yes.
And Chuck is yes, so we're good.
great. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
everybody.